This soul is called the European soul. Why European soul?
Welcome to day 6 of our tour in Ghana. Let's take a look at our itinerary for the day. We started out the day with breakfast at the Royal Ridge Hotel. We really enjoyed our stay. Although we were only there for one night, it was a very nice hotel. After breakfast, we took a walk around the grounds and we were very impressed. Elmina Slave Dungeon was about a 45-minute drive from the Royal Ridge Hotel. We could not find much information on it, but apparently it played a pivotal role in the slave trade in the United States. Elmina Castle, which should better be known as Elmina Slave Dungeon, was erected by the Portuguese in 1482. It was the first trading post built on the Gulf of Guinea and the oldest European building existing south of the Sahara. As we begin our tour in Elmina Dungeon, we're directed to a building in the center courtyard. Over top of the door, there's a placard that reads Portuguese Church. It's hard to believe that our introduction to Christianity started with our enslavement. Currently, this building is being used as a welcoming center with pictures that depict our rich history and how Ghana has evolved as a country. Elmina is a fishing village and remains a fishing village to today. Most of the residents of this fishing village have no idea of what went on here in this dungeon. So, as you can see as we walk through this welcoming center, the rich history of the Ghanaians, our history did not start with slavery. And it is a slap in the face for American history books to say that it did. Most of these people in these pictures are wearing kente, and their kente is woven with gold inside of it. So it's a rich history, so one that we should definitely be proud of. The courtyard that we're standing in is the male slave courtyard. All the doors and the base of the courtyard lead to cells that held enslaved men. The residents of the dungeon were merchants, priests, missionaries, surgeons, and officers. The governor stayed in the house that's directly behind us. It's important to understand that many people were complicit in our slavery. So that means that Africans just didn't sell Africans. Africans didn't construct something this elaborate, nor did they construct something as elaborate as the slave system that went around the world. So that is a lie that's being told to us. The building that we went in that was labeled the Portuguese church eventually turned out to be the first Roman Catholic church in Ghana. So the Roman Catholic Church was also complicit in our slavery.
Now let's see this message written on this wall. The message was written in the year 1992 during the first PANAFest, Pan-African Historical Theatre Festival. And the theme for the celebration was Re-Emergence of African Civilization, Uniting Africans in the Diaspora. There was a ceremony here called Fiankra, which means when the enslaved Africans were taken away from their own soil, they never had any chance of saying goodbye, as they were separated, segregated, or divided for good. At the end of the ceremony, this message was written. As you can read yourself, the main highlight is this: today, may any of the Africans in the diaspora like you want to come back home should find your root. May humanity never again be given any chance to perpetrate such injustice against humanity. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
That's right.
And these are two cells, European cell when they condemn cell. Let me ask, if this structure is a slave dungeon, why do you have European cell in a slave dungeon? If this structure is a slave dungeon, why do you have a condemned cell? Because there were dungeons already created for enslaved Africans to be kept. So why a condemned cell? When we get in, you wait for an answer to these questions. But before we enter, I am personally much more concerned about the language that sometimes people use to represent the narrative. As you speak today, many people still refer to this structure as a castle. Is this a castle or a dungeon?
It's a dungeon.
This is a dungeon. The moment one decides to use certain language to represent the narrative, we are erasing history. And that is so sad. People still refer to our ancestors as slaves. Were they slaves or they were enslaved Africans?
They were enslaved.
Enslaved. So I believe that as people, we have to represent the history. And for that matter, the real language must be used to represent the narrative. Because the sugar-coated history is always out there. But the real truth is always hidden. So when anytime you have the privilege and the chance, you make sure that the real message is rather very good. Let's see. European cell. Why European cell? A cell that they created for European soldiers who misbehaved or misconducted themselves. Soldiers that went to town that got drunk needed to be disciplined. Because the cell was meant for their own people, it has two ventilations, one on my right, one on my left, meant for enough air to come through. Why me ask, how many European soldiers were brought in? About 5, 2, or even 1. They had access to food, they had access to water. They were treated as human beings. We are going to compare the condition of the cell to the one for enslaved Africans on their own soil, on their own land. cell. A cell that they created for enslaved Africans that were kept in the dungeons. These people were not cowards. Despite the pains and suffering that they were going through, they were fighting for their freedom, they were fighting for their beliefs. Any little chance that they had in coming to contact with these Europeans, they fought with them. They saw them to be a threat. They saw them to be a threat regarding mass rebellion. So as punishment, they took them out of the dungeons, put them back in chains, brought them into the cell, locked the door as I have done, and they starved all of them to death. No food, no water. No enslaved African ever came into the cell and came out alive or survived. That is why we saw the skull and the crossbone above the door, which has always been there and which represents death. This metal with the holes served as peepholes for the soldiers to look through to see if anyone is dead. The door was opened. The body was taken out and thrown into the ocean. One may ask, how many enslaved Africans were kept over here? They never cared about the numbers. Why? This was the only space they had created as a country themselves. Look on this side of the wall. You can see scratches of their nails on the walls as they struggled, as they fought for help. Help came from them because among themselves, they came from different tribes, different areas, with different languages. This is the difference between the European cell and the condemned cell, the African cell for enslaved Africans on their own soil. This is the famous slave courtyard, where 400 women were shed among the dungeons on the ground floor. Now let's pause to comprehend about the numbers. 600 men were shed among the men's dungeon, 400 women in the winter. How many talking about? 1,000. On the average of every 3 months, about 1,000 enslaved Africans were shed from the slave, both men and women. 3 months is equal to a quarter, 4 quarters is to a year. So every year talking about 4,000. You multiply 4,000 by 235 years by the time. You do the same calculation for the Portuguese. You're talking about almost 2 million Africans that were transported from the slave dungeon. The US said, what about other dungeons like Cape Coast Dungeon, Christopher Dungeon, and other West African coast, where they did not have to come to the dungeons, but they were shipped directly. And you ask yourself, how many enslaved Africans also died in the dungeons, on their way to the dungeons, over the passage, in the process of being captured. These are numbers that one cannot quantify. And that is why we have to talk about this. So when you go to US and they say February the Black History Month, when they go to UK, they say October the Black, I keep out myself. Why should they have a particular month? As each day, each week, each month is Black History Month. The sec deeper of the narrative. Sexually in the dungeon, some of them were abused. This is a balcony meant for the governor to stand. He gave orders to the soldiers to have the gate of the dungeons opened. All of them came out here. They looked down, selected. The one chosen by the governor had been in of this dungeon for several days, weeks, or months without bathing, brushing her teeth, or washing down. She would be smelling bad. As a result, these are water reservoirs. The reservoirs were constructed by the Portuguese. Rainwater was harvested in this. This contains 20,000 gallons of rainwater. Once selected, they used bucket to fetch water from the reservoir, meant for her to bathe. One would ask, where did she have a bath? She took her bath just right here. What an embarrassment, what a humiliation, what an insult. No one ever. After this, she was given something small just to cover herself, then forced to walk through this door. Now this is the staircase, and this staircase is connected to the governor's bedroom. So she was forced to use the staircase to lead up into the governor's bedroom. Then she was raped by the governor. After this unfortunate incident against her own will, she returned to the dungeon of which she met. Which time some of them became pregnant, and those who became pregnant were not transported. Why? They wanted a strong man for the journey, not enslaved men who had become too weak due to pregnancy. That was when they started to build stone houses after the dungeons. Move them into the stone houses until they gave birth. The children were given European names. They were treated better. They had a school established, meant to give them education. They grew up, not to see themselves as African because they were light skinned, intelligent children. And some became merchants, interpreters, agents, and among other privileges. But they always felt superior to those of that because of the skin color. Racism, discrimination, prejudice did not begin to study. Some of these women were so courageous to resist abuse. Any enslaved woman who resisted rape was also subjected to severe punishment. What punishment was that? Let's find out what they come for. This cannonball that we are seeing today, at that time, used to be 8 cannonballs. And each cannonball weighs about 25 kg, equivalent to 50 pounds. Any enslaved woman who resisted rape was chained to her ankle for 24 hours, no food, no water. In the scorching heat, in the rains, and with a heavy downpour, they were still beating it wide to put fear among the others. Let's work. This is a slave dungeon. All the rooms that you're walking through are dungeons. The first room took about 100 women, about 150 women were kept in this dungeon. The floor is still the original floor. But there was living blind, defecation, urinating, vomiting, and menstruating. Human faces, urine, blood, and vomiting were all over the dungeons. The doors had wooden gates to prevent anyone from escaping. Due to the unhygienic conditions of the dungeons, due to poor ventilation sources, because the only source of ventilation where these two, where the animals are on the other side, it always affected the mortality rate. As a result, an additional vent was later put on the side. Unfortunately, it was connected to the magazine, where they kept the guns and the gunpowder. Any leakage, the toxins of the chemicals came inside, worsening the condition of these women. And those who died were taken out and thrown. As the scene became the recipient of those who died on their own soil. Any question? This is another slave dungeon that took about 120 women. We can see some clothes and chains on the floor. These are not the original clothes and chains made by those that were captured. But in the year 2016, about 8 years ago, there was a reenactment program in this dungeon where a group of Africans, numbered about 60, volunteered themselves for a reenactment program. The chains were used to put to themselves, or were put to themselves a cloth ways to cover the private part, and they slept in the dungeon for 12 hours. After 12 hours of reenactment, it was traumatic and unimaginable experience. Why? Mosquito bite was all over them, the stench was too hard to bear. The people began to ask, if 12 hours in the dungeons in our time was too traumatic, what about our ancestors who had to be in the dungeon for a month, 2 months, or 3 months? Above this dungeon was a church built by the Dutch, where they claimed to worship God. The meat was a dungeon. What an animal. What an evil worship. What about God were they worshiping? looking for the answer. Next question. When the ship arrived, all the women who survived in the women's dungeon were moved out of the dungeons, put them back in chains, and this is the female passage that they used to get into the room of no return to begin the autumn return. We are supposed to go through this passage to see the door of no return. But you can see some iron bars because the wooden staircase is no more. Because of this drainage, when it rains, the water could easily find its way out. As a result, we are going to make use of the male passage or the men's passage to see the door of no return. What you saw at Cape Coast is the door of return, which was created artificially around 1990s. But at Elmina Slave Dungeon, we are going to see the original door of no return, the one that our ancestors went through to begin the journey. Yeah. We are supposed to go through this, the room of no return here. But I don't want us to, I want to avoid double steps. To go down and come up. So once we are here, I want us to take the privilege to go out and see the upper part. That this place is the last place, and you end the tour. So you don't have to go because of the stiffness of the steps. But bear with me with that. Thank you. Remember, I was last one. Oh, American. This is the governor's balcony, meant for the governor to stand. And this is the female slave quarter where he gave orders to have the gate of the women's dungeon open. All of them came out here. They assembled over there. He looked down to pick a woman of his own choice. The one chosen by the governor had to use the staircase to go after bathing. And this is the trap door. This is a trapdoor meant for the one chosen by the governor to come up. And here, straight up into the governor's bed, where she suffered abuse by the governor. Go ahead.
It's heavy.
So now you can see this is the staircase, and this staircase is connecting us to the governor's bed. Let's use it. See his face. Back to the dungeons. As you can see, this is the bedroom for the governor. The living rooms are here. So one bedroom, two living rooms. One bedroom, two living rooms. Meant for one person in charge of the post structure, that's the governor. As against the dungeons, where hundreds lived and suffered from. When we see the 8 equities, the impact that has always been existence as far as the history of mankind is concerned. That room, that door is locked, used to be, that led to his personal bedroom or washroom, but it's locked. So you can see a whole apartment meant for him as a gift. Let's see. So this is the officer's mess. In other words, the dining hall, where they were eating and drinking. Underneath of the names of the law was a slave person, where 150 women were kept of British. So you can see on my left, you can see a white structure on the hill that is called Fort St. Jago. Built by the Dutch in the year 1665. They had soldiers stationed over there to monitor inland in order to protect the state from attacks that came from the territory. It's always said as a military base. Now these are cannons, and these cannons were used to defend the structure from attacks. When fired, the cannonball could travel a distance between 1 kilometer to 1.5 kilometers at range. Down here are the moats, the inner moat and the outer moat. In the peak of slavery, the seawater was coming through the moat, and the wooden bridge was lifted up in the evening to prevent the Stellan forces from using the front view to prevent it from counter-attacks. And the 4-square yellowish diagram is a compass. It also served as a sundial. So to see the time of the day, a long pole was always at the center. The shadow was used to communicate the time among themselves, as far as the activities in the dungeons was concerned. At this point, just give you a minute before to take some few pics. You can do that before we go back to the room of no return to see the last part and end the talk. Hi, and I step. Unlike it was done. So they use some of the locals as or the indigenous as laborers. But which time when the extension were being made by the Dutch when they took over, some of the slaves were used as laborers in terms of the extension that were made by the Dutch. So at the time, I remember I told that this one was built for trading other commodities. Before later they turned it into a dungeon. So when they came, the slavery has not started or had not begun. That's what they brought that 600 artisans from Portugal, and they used some local laborers and assisted them to put up the structure. But later on, when the Dutch took over, they made extensions. So all the yellow wood bricks that we have came from Netherlands. So at the time that they were making extension or making modifications to some areas to suit their own architecture design, they used some of the enslaved Africans as laborers. These are supporting walls, they are buttresses to strengthen the walls of the structure from coming down because of the stretch of the people. At this point, when the ship arrived, all the men pushed about in the men's dungeon used the middle passage to get into the room of the ship. And it's the same process to see the door of the one step down. this room is, let me put up the light for you to see that's how it used to be. This is the room is called the intersection room. Why intersection? For several days, weeks, and months in the dungeons, both sexes did not see each other, which means husbands were separated from their beloved wives. As all the men were kept in the men's dungeon, the women were held in the women's dungeon. So as far as life in the dungeons were concerned, they did not see each other. They did not communicate among each other because they came from different tribes, areas, different languages. So when the ship arrived, all the women who survived in the women's dungeon came to this passage. There was a wooden staircase meant for the women to come down, and the men came to this passage. So this was the only point that for the first time, both sexes could see each other, but they could not communicate among themselves. As I said earlier, they did not know each other. So from here, straight into the room of what? No return, where we can. Excuse me. Please, now. Watch your head. Keep your head low, 4 steps down.
You go down,
1, 2, 3, 4.
4 before you go up. Go down. Be careful.
Now this is the room of no return, and this is the door or the gate of no return. You can see how narrow, tiny, small, little the size of the door is. One simple question that many people do ask is this: why this size of the door? Why too narrow? Why too tiny? Why too little? Some reasons accounted for that. One was to control the enslaved Africans. 2, for easy counting, so they could easily be counted, to know the numbers that they will move from the dungeons through this door. And the third reason was to dehumanize the Africans. But narrowing the door into this side did not suggest that those who were captured were not strong they were, but based on the conditions that they were subjected to when they were captured, as they walked on foot for several days, weeks, and months, with little food be given, such as cornmeal, or bread, rice, beans, just to give them little protein, with minimal quantity of food, they were losing weight on their way to the dungeons. In the dungeons, they kept on losing weight. By the time the ship arrived, due to the weight losses, each captive would just fit through this door. At that time, the sea was up here, was touching the structure. But due to the shallowness of the sea, the ship docked some few meters away. They used wooden boats, transported them into the ship. They were parked in the holdings below them as if they were not human beings. The journey across the ocean began. Unfortunately, they never knew where they were going, never knew how long the passage would take. The conditions on the boat ship, they had no knowledge about it. There was no point that their situation became better. It rather worsened from one point to the other. Today, if all these walls have mouth to speak, they would have spoken better than me. Why? They saw the tears, the pains, the cries, the suffering, but their voices were never heard. This reminds me of an old African proverb which says this: until the lion learn how to write its own story, the hunt will always work for the hunter. If any of our ancestors were to be here today, the narrative will be different. Today, if you go to Florida in the US, Wisconsin, DC, some European lands, you see how laws are being passed that African history, Black history, needs not to be taught in schools. And I keep asking myself, why is this happening? There is a vital lesson for all of us. That is, if all these structures are not preserved till today, many people would have disputed that this never happened. Even if it happened, it's a myth. But now that we have all the evidence surrounding us, what they can do is to make sure that the original truth is erased from their books. They will try, but they will never succeed because younger generations are rising to own the narrative. And also when you or me, make sure that the true narrative is preserved, is shared, and is told. This is the room of no return. We are going to return, which is a symbol of faith for us. By that time, none of one says ever came to this room and returned. But you'll return, so when you go back, you can relate, you can share. Because the best way to understand history is to experience it and to really look at it more. And that is what we have done here. After your pictures, you return to give a summary of the whole. So, thank you. Any question?
Yeah. There's a question. You see the leaves here.
These were brought back to get this set. Who connected several dangers in memory of the ancestors who died. Watch your head once again when you're coming out.
Lunch was held at the beautiful Coconut Grove. It is a resort and Elmina fishing village I can tell you the food was great. We were on the beach. As you can tell, we're overlooking the beach. Beverly and Christopher had coconut water. I had the standard ginger ale. The menus were the same as all the other places that we went. We really didn't take pictures of the food, but it was great. We took a ride up to the Kakuma National Park. It's in the rainforest about an hour outside of Elmina. One of the main staples that come out of the rainforest is the cocoa. And the cocoa beans and how they are such a staple and how they boosted the economy in Ghana. Part of the national park is a nature walk, or what I was told was a nature walk. We met the members of our party and we were told that the nature walk would be about 45 minutes to an hour. And, we were very pleased to just go on a nature walk. Didn't really want to see too many animals and all that, but the nature walk we were told would be challenging and one that we would thoroughly enjoy. So as we started off and started up the hill, you're going to notice some changes in our clothing. This is just not a nature walk. This is a serious uphill 45-minute walk. So we were up for the challenge.
Hello.
It's fun, but I'm wondering, why are they going up these stairs? And why did the path lead to here? I also noticed that our tour guides weren't sweating. And they were wearing all white and sandals, and they're still not sweating. At this point, our tour guide tells us that this is not only a nature walk, but this is another suspended bridge.
No. No, God, please, no! 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 No!
So as we start across the bridge, which is the only way to get down from the nature walk, is we find out that there's 7 bridges. Not one, but 7. And twice as high as the last ones. So let me just go back to say, I don't have a problem with being on suspended bridges. I have a problem with falling off of suspended bridges. And these bridges are narrower than the other ones. As you can tell, this is a challenge, and I really have to focus in order to get through this. Some people are not even holding on to the sides. I wasn't taking that chance. I'm holding on to the sides, so if you see any of the white knuckling of me in any of these photos, that's because I don't like being on suspended bridges. So at the end of the day, as this comes to a close, one thing that I've definitely learned: read the itinerary before you go on a nature walk. The walk down was just as treacherous as the walk up. As you can see, us standing here at the end, if you notice that all of us are drenched in sweat, and this was definitely the time for us to go back to the hotel. So as the day comes to a close, we ate dinner at the Tang Palace after we got back, went upstairs and definitely got into the shower and rested for the day to come. Thank you for watching, and Day 7 is coming up for our trip in Ghana.